All right. Well, we're going to start, and he's going to join us when he can. All right, we've got quorum, so it's 4 o'clock. Let's call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. First item, action items purchases. Mr. Oberst.
Yes, good afternoon, committee members. Yep, the first, and as you're all aware, we have a board meeting immediately following, well, not immediately following, but at 6:30 tonight. So these action items, like the purchasing agenda, if they are approved to go forward, will go forward actually tonight, so you'll see it again. The purchasing agenda is the first part of your, first couple pages of your packet. Under the general fund, those items are common reoccurring expenditures, if you will, the IB fees, the GR University Prep Academy, phys ed classes are held at the YMCA, that's the fee for that. Tricky Trot t-shirts and Covenant House, we provide technology support to them. And so we are buying hardware because of we can obviously get a better price, but that'll be reimbursed by the Covenant House, the $29,311 for the hardware. And then on the special funds, KIT services, school services network fees from Title I dollars, GRASS, which is our summer program, some postal fees for that, and then continuing contracts for tripod surgery and support for that, training for that, coming from the Doug and Maria DeVos Foundation. Actually, the grants for those will be up here shortly. And then under the bond projects, to extend phase 2 of the contract with Platt Moran to provide construction services for our construction program under the bonds, and another we'll have a resolution coming up here for that second tranche of bonds too, which we'll address. So that's what's in the purchasing agenda this month. Questions?
Question on, it may be trivial, but, $29,000 on T-shirts. Where do those funds come from? And the rationale, is it advertising or what is it?
The funds for
The Turkey Trot T-shirts. I just, it's $29,691.
we're paying it out of Board of Ed funds, athletic budget.
Okay. So this comes out of the athletic budget. And
All the other expenses associated with that were covered by the fees we charge and sponsorship fees.
Okay, and so is the logic behind that, or the justification, advertising, or what is it?
Justification behind.
It's significant dollars. And,
Yep.
The next item, purchases Chromebooks for students. For the same amount.
Yeah. It's, well, you have 4,000 people that have gone to that.
I was gonna say, was that a part of, like, when I purchased my ticket, the justification for my cost of the ticket included the
Well,
T-shirt?
yeah,
Is that
for
what-
those that entered, they they obviously they actually got a full package, which included the T-shirt. So
So that was
the fact that we, 26 years and continue to raise significant dollars, and that's just our, if you will, the district's contribution to that, the cost of the T-shirts. Like I said, the other costs of that were either covered by entry fees and sponsorships, or, for instance, direct donations after the completion of the race. Water, bananas, those kinds of things were donated by sponsors. So
I understand.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
kind of curious.
I would
Wondering,
imagine, as someone who tries to provide value to sponsors regularly,
Yeah.
I would imagine it was probably part of that sponsorship value of,
yeah, it is.
title,
Actually,
premier location,
the sponsor is
text,
on the
yeah.
back of the T-shirt. Yeah,
I
the Turkey
hear you,
Trot
it's
in the
not
front
cheap.
and
Right,
sponsors in the
right.
back. Yeah.
I know we got one, and I just.
And it included both participants, and then all the volunteers also got a T-shirt, nice long sleeve T-shirts. They had a different color. They had pink. Ours were gray. Green. That's right.
Yeah, I think
Everyone liked the pink ones. I heard the debrief afterwards that Mr. Johnson said, Kurt Johnson said, the the pink ones were favored over the participants' green ones, so anyways. Okay,
Any other questions on the purchasing agenda? All right, may I please have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Great, moving on to grants, please.
grants, yeah, again, continuing grants from the DeVos Foundation on tripod surveys and training for administrators to conduct those teacher evaluations through Cambridge Education. 41,200 for and 80,000, so 121,200 in total.
All right, questions on this? Okay, hearing none, may I please have a motion to move this forward to the full board?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries.
And then thirdly, in our action items, we have two resolutions. The first being a resolution to approve the issuance of our second tranche of bonds. We issued half of the 175 million, half of them were issued in March of 2016. The second half will be issued. Timing has not been firmed up yet. The resolution essentially gives us the ability to issue the bonds anytime during 2019 without further action. Our intent would be to issue these prior to June 30th. The exact timing is dependent on market conditions and other things, as you're well aware. So, and we intend to use, excuse me, at this point, the same lead underwriter, Stifel Nicholas, and we have their cost has been capped or not estimated, but it's been capped at the 6%, which is similar to what it was last year. Likely, we will hire at least one other co-manager because of the significance of the issue. So that's what and it's a lot of legal information in there, which is required by, and a lot of this stuff will end up actually end up in the offering document too. But basically, what it does is it allows the district to do that. It essentially gives me and the superintendent, the ability to negotiate final terms along with our financial advisors, which are our PFM. We will continue to use Varnum as our bond counsel. They've been great. They continue to help us along the negotiating their legal sides of issuing bonds. So, but it gives us internally the flexibility with our financial advisors to impact the timing and when those bonds are issued, and the actual cost of the bonds being the interest rate we ultimately issue the bonds at. So it's also we're asking for a negotiated sale, which is more preferential, and it's easier to deal with than the other is a competitive bid, which is is used very infrequently, where you have to put it out to a number of different underwriters and wait for all the bids to get back in. And we, as far as I know, the district has always used a negotiated process when they've issued bonds. We did the first tranche here, and it worked out nicely for us. So.
Mr. Opus, I do have
Yeah.
one question.
Sure.
I missed, you said that all the details would be in which document?
Once we decide to issue the bonds, there's what's called an offering document, which is a big legal document that lays out the bond, how many dollars of bonds we're issuing, all the disclosures required. Our financial statements are in it, a bunch of other things. So it's a legal required document that then goes to those folks that are in institutions that are interested in buying our bonds. So.
Any other questions about this resolution? All right, may I please have a motion to move the resolution forward to the board?
I move forward.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, and our annual banking resolution.
And the second resolution is our annual banking resolution, which needs to go before the board to approve our both our depository institutions and those institutions that are investing in our funds. I will tell you that if you look on the first page of that resolution, we have 3 depository, Fifth Third Bank, Huntington National Bank, PNC being our lead bank, and then on item 4 of that resolution, you'll see the organizations that provide which invest district funds, Federated Securities, Fifth Third, PNC Capital Markets, Huntington, Michigan Cooperative Liquid Asset, and then Michigan Liquid Asset Fund is where most of our bond dollars are invested. It's essentially a cooperative amongst many districts and governmental entities that throw dollars in there, so we actually get the best yield. All of the investment, as you probably are aware, maybe Ms. Grant being new, there are restrictions by law what we can invest district funds in. It's basically, they cannot be invested in the stock market. It's basically low risk CDs, high-rated corporate bonds, government securities, those kinds of things. But as with many investment vehicles, the more money you have to invest, typically you get higher yields. So that's why the Michigan Liquid Asset Fund is, I think we started out 3 years ago when the bonds were issued at an effective average rate of maybe 0.7%. We're up over 2% now, it's no longer. So it's the rise in interest rates while impacts negatively those that have consumer loans, it's positive for us that are investing money. So that all figures into the whole bond sale and the funds available to spend on our construction. So that's that. Again, no changes from last year.
Good, thank you. Questions about the banking resolution? Okay, may I have a motion, please, to move forward this annual banking resolution to the board?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, reports, financial statements.
Okay, the financial statements, the financial dashboard, it summarizes the year-to-date information. We're tracking appropriately. I do want to point out one item. If you look at the financials, the general fund, general programs operation statement there, the 3 columns year-to-date. If you look year-to-date 2019, and just want to point out, if you go down to the about midway down the health benefits line, if you can locate that, and if you look in the current year, we're just about 10.1 million of expenditures for health benefits. If you look at a year ago, which is the far right column, you'll see we're just about $8 million, so a $2.1 million increase. Just to remind the committee, these interim financial statements are prepared on a cash basis, so we actually spend the money is when it gets recorded in our books. At year end, for audited financial statements, the fund statements are prepared on a modified cash basis, which allows for some accruals, but on an interim basis, it's cash in, cash out. So that difference from year to year in health benefits is related to a year ago. The MESA bill was actually paid in December. This year was paid in November. So I think next month you should see those two amounts be more comparable.
Good job. Okay.
That's why just a timing difference in cash going out the door, if you will. And then down below, just to summarize, we were talking about bond. You can see the capital expenditure section. The middle column there, you see the 58.5 million. That's about what we spent out of the bond proceeds year to date from March of 2016 when the bonds were issued through November. And we had a slow start on that early on, but things are well and moving along very nicely now, and which will allow us to issue that second tranche, as I mentioned, sometime within the first 6 months of 2019. That's any questions on, and again, the detail supporting that's behind that dashboard report for those that like to get into the financial details.
Perfect. No questions from me. Either of you have any questions? Very good. Warm, safe, and dry, and bond.
Nothing to report on warm, safe, and dry. We have a little over $250,000 remaining. There's no timetable to spend it. So right now, we're just keeping that in reserve for an emergency if we need it. We'll see where we go, but it's kind of nice to have because if a roof were to blow off, we have something to deal with quickly. Bond, city's moving along, should be done about the end of the school year. The elementary air conditioning projects, 2 are completed, Campus L and Frost Elementary. The North Park, East Leonard, Shawmut, and Brookside are moving along. The only issue we've had is the timing of consumers bringing their feeds in to the building. That's moved all over the place with consumer schedule. Latest is we have 2 of them now back to during holiday break. Otherwise, there should be no issue getting done for around the spring break time with those. Ottawa and Southwest Community Campus High School, their designs are wrapping up in the next few weeks. We intend to go to bid in January and bring bids to the Finance Committee in February for a March board action. Ottawa, we're working on a document that we can share with the community that we'll take out. And to be honest, we haven't done a lot with Ottawa, and there's been a lot of questions, and Superintendent Neal's been kind of organizing the groups that will go to. And then at Southwest, there was a request that we have more options for colors and finishes, and we have the architect working on that, and then we'll make sure we go back out and share with the different groups and get some input. Union, that design is moving forward. We will go to bid in May or June, and one of the things at Union is replacement of the heat system. And obviously, we've had some problems over the last couple of years, and while some of us still call it the new Union, it's more than 50 years old. So that will include changing out the heat exchangers that have been giving us the problems and going to a full hot water heat system and adding air to the buildings. And then if you've been on Union, the second floor, the one side of the classrooms are kind of small, so we're right-sizing those classrooms as part of it. That's the basics of the plan, but that's where we are, and we really won't start anything else till after the second tranche of bonds is sold.
I'd just like to make another comment related to the Southwest Community Campus High School. That's part of that Plaza Roosevelt development that includes a number of other partners, and we don't own the land where the high school is planned to go on, where the high school is planned to be built, and that's currently owned by Habitat Humanity. We've been in the process of getting the legal work done to be able to purchase that land, and that included, there's a condominium agreement because of the number of people that are involved there. There's a master deed, and when you're working with 3 or 4 other parties that are going to own parcels in that development and their legal teams, it's gone as well as it can be, but it's just a lot of back and forth and getting the documents correct. We also ran into a bit of a issue with some of the title work on the parcels. In the process of clearing that up, we had hoped to be able to bring that purchase agreement, of the land to this meeting. It didn't happen, so it's likely, and Ms. Schottky and I talked about this on Friday, it's likely that'll come to the full board directly on your January 7th meeting. As Ken mentioned, we like to bid that out in January, but we wanted to wait till we owned the land before we could actually bid it. So just to let you know that likely we will have that agreement for your review and hopefully approval at the January 7th board meeting.
Thanks. Any other questions about bond or warm, safe, and dry? Good. Okay. Looks like we have a couple of other items there on the agenda.
Couple other
You wanna
items,
walk us
just
through
for your
those two?
information, and some of you may or may not have heard, but state of Michigan allocated some additional funds for security that is being administered by the state police. But we were fortunate enough to receive an allocation of $866,000. There was a matching requirement, so our match to that is about $289,000. Now, a chunk of what we can use this money for would be what we would use some of the bond technology funds. So that'll free up some of those funds, the bond funds, bond security funds. So that'll free up some of the bond security funds to be used in other places. But that is, that essentially, any expenditures on November 1st through September of next year is essentially the length of the grant. Larry Johnson, Mr. Johnson has a plan in place as to what we will spend that on, and we'll be actually in the process right now of doing some of that, making some of those expenditures currently. But again, it's dollars from the state administered by the state police. And then just another piece of information, this is, it's a little bit of a out of the ordinary, if you will, but Grand Rapids Community Foundation, as part of their Challenge Scholarship grant program, if you will, has allocated $165,000 of those dollars, Challenge Fund dollars, into they call a Promise Fund, and, I'm sorry, a Dream Fund. And the intent of the Dream Fund is to solicit proposals currently from teachers and administrators within the district, and it only applies to the 5 West Side schools that are part of the Challenge Scholarship program. And these are micro grants, $100, $200, up to, somewhere 1,000, or even larger than that. And there's a process where an online application is prepared by a recipient. Again, right now it's a teacher or administrator. It's going to be expanded after the first year. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And then the requirement is that application be approved by the building administrator principal, and then it goes off to the community foundation, and they have a committee made up of foundation members, teachers or administrators, our administrators, students, and parents that look at these applications and approve them or disapprove them. And then the dollars come into the business office. We control the dollars, set it up into the principal's account for whatever building it was approved for, and then those dollars are spent whatever particular project that was approved. It's up to the administrator of the building to make sure the dollars are spent. Community foundation, if there are leftover dollars, we get to keep that. So if the estimate is going to cost us $200, we spend $150. We still keep the $200. When the project is done, there's just a brief note, if you will, sent back to the community foundation indicating it's done, this is what we learned, this is what we think the benefit of what we did. So it wasn't well communicated to us initially. All of a sudden the business office is getting calls from community foundation wanting account information so they could transfer money to us, and so we met with them a few weeks ago and put in place some additional controls to control this thing, because there was a number of these grants. It's going to be expanded in January to include both students and community organization, and the amount of the grants will be extended up to $50,000. So we're looking at, to try, as you know, the board there's a $2,500 donation approval process for the board. Right now, any grants below that through this program currently, it just doesn't need your approval. We've instructed the community foundation that anything over $2,500, and we also were not getting reports of who got grants. So we get this money, we didn't know what it was for. Essentially, we ran into one situation we'll mention where I think there was a proposal for an upgrade to a media center. Well, of course, Ken's group has to be part of that. You just can't go in there. So some of those kinds of things that the community foundation really didn't know about, and which is why we need to have the building administrator approve every grant, because they have the knowledge of what it might take to get a grant done. So anyways, when it's expended in January for community members and students and grants of $50,000, we're in the process now of both internal conversations, and we're going to meet again with the foundation. That's going to need some additional administrative constraints, if you will. We're also looking at the volume of over $2,500 grants and try not to overburden the boards. We may come back to you at a future date, probably in late second board meeting, well, maybe next finance committee meeting, with maybe a bit of a different approval process for those 2,500 to, a $10,000 grants that we don't have to come to you all the time to get that thing done. Clearly, anything large, we will still come to you and get your approval. And we've communicated that information to the Community Foundation to let them know that right now, if there's grants more than $2,500, that we need board approval. So you need to let us know soon as you know, so we can get it on the agenda. And we will not disperse any funds until we've let them know they have board approval. So it's certainly it's good and it's going to be beneficial, and but we just need some controls in place to make sure we can control the money. As you know, we have the fiduciary responsibility in these things, and have some assurances that the dollars get spent the way that are appropriate. And the other issue is any dollars that are spent through the district, as you know, have to follow not only board policy, but also there is state laws that govern how we can use our funds. So even though it may be granted from an outside organization, it's going to go through our accounts and has to follow our spending procedures. Again, the Community Foundation, as well as those applying for the grant, many don't know what those rules are. We already had, I think one of the grants, someone wanted to buy gift cards for our teachers. Can't do it. It's not allowed. So anyways, it's those kinds of things that we have to make sure that there are controls in place, so we abide by the law too, quite frankly. So but that's the nature of that.
Did you say there was at the beginning, is there a overall pool of money that they've established up to that per grant?
Yeah, they've set aside $165,000. And they may or may not, that's available, may or may not be all spent, just depends on the number of grant applications they get. Right now, what we've seen is, as I said, most of those have been, I'm going to say $100 to maybe $300 range, if you will.
So you know, this has been since when they lost this, you know?
The first time we started getting things were like middle of October.
And that's when I guess we sat down with Community Foundation, maybe it was 3 weeks ago now, plus internal folks, just to talk it out and let them know what had to, some things that had to happen, because keep this under control, if you will.
So I guess I was wondering, had there been enough frequency where it would be prudent to at least maybe with the building leaders, what's allowable, what's not allowable, maybe not district-wide, that needs to be shared, but at least let the building leaders know so they can sort of.
Yeah, we've had those conversations, yeah. So that's for your information.
Yeah, sounds incredibly well intentioned, of course, to provide resources to our schools. Yeah, I have lots of questions, but I don't know how relevant they are to finance. I just hope that the requirements of the grant actually align to desired outcomes for challenged scholars, right? These 5 schools obviously have that desired outcome. So I'm curious to see some of the structure of really what are the types of applications they're likely to approve, or how does it align with our goals for those 5 schools. Curious too, just, I think we spoke first come, first serve, right? So
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
about equity distribution among our schools either, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And clearly, as Ms. Shotkin and I discussed, if we get to the situation with the commute next year in January with community organizations, you can use your imagination, but potentially they may have a $50,000 program they want to implement in our schools that's just not consistent with what we're trying to achieve. So that will be part of the next conversation with Community Foundation, as well as our administrators, which were in that first meeting too. The building principals and our executive directors are all on the same page in terms of how this thing has to work. So
Great. Okay, other comments? All right, I believe that takes us to the end of our agenda. Anything else from your end?
well, I guess I just maybe confirm, and we chatted briefly, but obviously on January 7th, there's a new organizational meeting for should we just plan on having the January meeting at least at the same time, the fourth Monday at 4 o'clock? Would that be our understanding still?
That is my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
So we'll plan on that, and then
Okay.
if and when there's a new chair,
Yeah.
they can figure out the best meeting time for the
Okay.
committee. Yep.
Great,
Sounds
perfect.
good to us.
Thank you.
All right, with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.